Hey, LinkedIn, and welcome to Business Unusual. This is a live show where we talk about the changing nature of work. I am Susie Jackson. I'm a news editor at LinkedIn, coming to you today to talk about career pivots and how you might change the industry that you work in. Before we get to that main topic, I want to look at some of the other stories that LinkedIn members are talking about today, August 13th. First up, Tesla announcing a 5-for-1 stock split that they say is designed to make stock ownership more accessible to employees and investors. Tesla's split follows Apple's recent announcement of a 4-for-1 split of its stock. LinkedIn member Christine Onyang coming to the platform to question who is next. She wants to know Amazon, Google, Netflix, Shopify. Tell us what you think in the comments today throughout the show. We're also following another story that LinkedIn members are chatting about today. Customers are owed billions of dollars in refunds from airlines and travel agencies, according to a report from the Wall Street Journal. Some travel providers have allegedly capitalized on the early chaos of the pandemic to dodge issuing those refunds. Scott McCartney, who is a LinkedIn member and also the reporter who worked on that journal story, came to the platform to say, in a crisis, how you treat your customers will be remembered. He also noted that some of the airlines are doing the right thing by customers. For more stories like these, check out the LinkedIn News module to the right of the newsfeed if you're on your desktop, or if you're joining us on mobile today after the show, click into your search box. You'll see those stories and more from the LinkedIn News team. We also want to ask you the LinkedIn News poll question of the day, which is very appropriate for the topic of this show. Have you been contemplating a career pivot as a result of the pandemic? Let us know your thoughts in the stream. You can say A for no, B, yes for quality of life reasons, or C for financial reasons. We're going to be asking that question throughout the show today, gathering your thoughts and checking in at the end with results. That brings us to our main story today, which is career pivots, changes, and transitions. COVID-19 has changed employment and prospects for employment in entire industries. For many people, it has forced the need to change careers entirely. LinkedIn's economic graph team has a new report out today on what career transitions have looked like in the past in many of the industries hardest hit today, including hospitality and retail. In a moment, my colleague George Anders will join me to dive into some of those numbers. But before he comes on, I want to hear from you. It's our poll question today. Have you considered a career jump? I'm also interested in, have you completed a career jump? Has it been successful? What might we learn from you? Share your thoughts and comments in the stream. We love to see you talking to one another and sharing ideas and support. So hop on in and talk to me and talk to each other throughout the show today. With that, I want to bring on George Anders. He is a senior editor at large here at LinkedIn. George, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be on the show.
Always great to have you, George. I'm really interested in you explaining to us what is this data that you and the economic graph team dug up here at LinkedIn around career pivots.
So here's what we did. We looked at the way people moved from one job to another from 2015 to 2019. And we really zeroed in on restaurants and hospitality and also on retail, because those are fields that have been in tremendous flux this year. So we wanted to know, okay, if you're in that industry and you need to get out, or you're looking for a fresh opportunity, or you're just plain out of work, where can you go? And then we broke it down. We analyzed everything from bartenders to customer service managers, really wide range of jobs, and summed it all up in our report.
That's great. So we're talking about a range of industries. We're talking about a lot of data crunched over 4 years. I'm really interested in diving into those trends, what we can see about where people might go now in this moment based on what's happened in those industries in the past. I want to take a moment, though, to welcome some members who are joining us in the stream. I see Phil from St. Louis. Welcome to the program. Paul from California, Tanya from Jamaica, Kimberly from Oregon, Scott from Virginia, Sherry from Chicago. Thank you so much for joining us today. George, tell us more about this data. I'm interested, if you're looking to jump industries, I know it can be helpful to take stock of what your skills are and see what might be transferable from one job to the next, even if it might not be obvious at first. Tell us some examples of where the data shows us it's an easy match to take those skills and map it to a new place.
So what we found is the easiest transitions are the ones where 70 to 80% of your skills are going to be just fine for your new job. So let's take something like a retail sales clerk. You can go into account management, you can go into business development. Those are jobs you can find across any industry, and they're very similar. They're customer facing. You're trying to make things happen. You're not standing there at the cash register doing it, but instead you're more likely to be on, working the phone, sending out emails, scheduling meetings. But all of those skills you've got about negotiations, about understanding the sales process, right on the money. That's going to be really helpful for you.
Oh,
Now, it's a different story in some other fields where people are trying to stretch farther. They're trying to work with a smaller set of skills. And in that case, you may need new training, either from your new employer, if they really like you and want to take care of you, or you may need to get a new degree or a certification. So, each field is its own story, but that's the big distinction we drew is between areas where you're pretty close to ready on day one and areas where you're going to have to stretch a bit to get there.
thank you, George. And we're seeing those sentiments from folks in the stream as well. We have Victor joining us to say that he left banking and went into life insurance. It was the best choice he ever made. So those seem like two industries where the skills are probably pretty common, pretty easy to notice. Eric, on the other hand, is saying that he is trying to do this now with some relatable skills, and he finds it very difficult for companies to see them as related. So what should someone like Eric do? I mean, is he at a loss? Is it just impossible to make some companies see this, or are we seeing other instances where members are able to make companies see that there is an overlap?
So this is an area where a good career counselor can help you a lot because there's a way to tell your story so that people go, oh yeah, that is transferable. In fact, I open our article today with a story of a woman who'd worked as a bartender in San Diego, and she is now working as a healthcare recruiter. And you go, okay, that's a little bit different. You're not serving up cocktails, you're serving up careers to people. But she had learned how to tell her story of, I know how to draw people out, I know how to listen to them, I know how to sort of guide them on choices. And she also had some background that was in healthcare from earlier in her career and actually from her college degree, which is in pharmacology. So she was able to build a story that says, hey, I'm not just a bartender. I'm someone who can work in a white collar job and have a successful role there. And she was able to make the switch.
That's really great news that she was able to do that. Dee in the stream is talking somewhat about that too, talking about flexibility and the ability to be retrained are key to growing, especially in this economy. George, you just mentioned bartenders. I want to talk about bartenders as a job specifically and where we're seeing those folks go. I believe that we have some data to share that we can flash on the screen in a moment here. Wonderful. So show us what are we looking at here, George? We're talking about bartenders and different industries they're able to pivot into where, like you said, they're not serving cocktails, they're serving other things. So what are some of those other things?
Yeah. So the top example you see on the graphic is account manager, which is basically a structured sales environment. I came across examples of people who've moved from retail, restaurants, hospitality into enterprise software. And now you're selling some sort of sophisticated software product, but you're talking to people. You're trying to connect with the customer. So that's very similar. Recruiter, we already went through, and real estate agent. And this is a job that people in almost any field will consider as a transition. It's not that hard to get into real estate. You can get certified. You don't require an enormous amount of capital to open up your office. But the important point that I want to make for people is that this is not a ticket to quick riches. And in fact, we pulled some data from the National Association of Realtors. And after 2 years in the field, up to 2 years, more than half the people are earning just $10,000 a year or less. That's not a living wage. That's not going to be the core for you. So if you think you've got some special aptitude or connections or something that will make you a success in real estate, go ahead. But that is an area where you want to make sure, do I have some other source of income? Because I may not be $1 million salesperson in year one. In fact, that probably won't happen in year two or year three. And you need to either have a cushion to get there or something else in your plan.
I think that's a great point to make, George. I think it can seem like an attractive option because, as you've mentioned in your article, there's really low barriers to entry. There's not a lot of heavy startup costs, but it might take some time to build. So it might not be the sole thing that you're pivoting into. Maybe it's something you're kind of running on the side while trying something else. You had mentioned retail a moment ago, and I have Michelle here in the stream saying that she made a pivot from retail, going from cosmetic sales to staffing sales as an account executive. I'm curious, what are some of the other moves that retail folks are making that we're seeing in the data?
So we looked a little bit at store managers because after all, that's an important pool of people. And that management experience is transferable in a bunch of different directions. You can end up, in project management, you can end up in operations management, and just that ability to keep track of a group of people, to keep people on task, that is transferable as well. So there's ways, particularly as you have more seniority, that you can start to step into other organizations too.
Okay, what about levels of seniority a bit further down, a bit more entering the workforce there, like a sales associate role? Is there a difference in where we see those folks going based on the data?
Yeah, they're staying in something that touched sales in any form is important. I mean, we have 17, 18 million people working in sales in the US. We've got more people in sales than in manufacturing. So here we see on the graphic, inside sales representative, business development manager. Both of those tend to touch the area of sales just in a different way. And then operations manager, I mean, just a general purpose business job. If you come to work on time, get along with your colleagues, can work within the system, there's probably an opportunity for you somewhere.
And let's talk about another position, the role of customer service. We've seen lots of different stories around that role on this show. We see in some places call centers are struggling because people aren't sitting next to each other anymore to be able to share tips or work through thorny problems. In other episodes, we've seen really a lot of success with call centers going remote, allowing more access to more people from different places. But if we're talking about customer service generally, if people are looking to get out of that kind of a job, where do we see them going?
So let's pull up the graphic on that one. And here we see operations manager, support manager, and once again, inside sales. So inside sales is kind of similar, except you're reversing the process. Instead of dealing with the person who has a problem with the product, you're trying to get them to buy the product, and hopefully they won't have a problem with it. And if they do, then that's a job for your colleague over in customer service. But support manager is one, operations manager. And again, this comes back to what I was talking about. If you've got manager in your title, there's a lot of businesses that need someone who can just keep the team on task. So being able to sell your expertise as something for a place looking for an experienced manager, someone who knows how to get the most out of a team, that can be very valuable.
And what if you need to bulk up on some of your skills? I have a member here, Rob, in the stream is wondering about enrolling in a certificate program at a popular college or in hot fields is a strategy towards a pivot. Where does re-education or reskilling or skilling up play into these conversations?
So we've certainly seen with our own LinkedIn Learning operation that the number of people taking classes has really shot up. And one of the things that comes out in a different survey of ours, the Workforce Confidence Index, is that people who are 45 or older tend to be taking courses either for entertainment value or to add to their skills in their current field. But millennials and Gen Z, there's a lot of people taking classes to get ready for a career pivot. And that is a good starting point. There are an awful lot of resources online, obviously with us, but with no end of other providers as well. And that's a great way also to try out a field and to start to think, do I want to invest 100 hours or 500 hours in getting skilled up, or does this just not feel like me? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting the credentials, getting certified, and that's a great way to prepare yourself for a new field.
That's so great, George. Thank you for crunching the numbers for us and letting us see that there are different paths for folks to take if they're in a circumstance where they've lost a job or looking to get out of it. There is hope. There are ways to change careers, and the data shows us that. So thank you for sharing with us.
There really are. Thanks for the chance to be on the show.
That was George Anders. He is a senior editor at large and a colleague of mine at LinkedIn, talking about numbers that the economic graph team here at LinkedIn crunched, looking at what the data says about career pivots over the last few years. I want to reintroduce our poll at this moment in the show to see what you're feeling about in terms of career pivots as a result of the pandemic. Have you considered it? Yes or no? Is it a quality of life thing for you? Is it for financial reasons? We want to keep hearing from you. We get some great comments coming in. I want to welcome next to the show Chelsea J. She is a career coach and resume writer and works extensively with people who are in this position of considering career pivots. Chelsea, welcome to the program.
Hi, Susie. Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you as well, and I'm really excited to get to this advice you have. You've been doing this for a long time. But first, I want to just kind of put some fears aside. I think there can be a lot of stigma associated with job hopping and career changes for folks. It might be intimidating. It might be, it's a tough time right now to change anything. But what about people who are worried about looking like they're a job hopper? What's that stereotype, and why should we be busting it?
Yes, definitely. So I am definitely an advocate for career changers and job hoppers. And of course, it can seem scary, and change seems scary, period. So just realize that you're normal and it is okay. But times have changed, the world has changed. A lot of employers are used to seeing job hoppers come into different fields, and they realize that job hoppers bring a variety of technical skills and interpersonal skills with them. And people who change careers often have a different point of view and a lot of different experience that they can really bring to the table and help drive your organization forward. So realize that organizations are okay with seeing that you have different experience. It's just really important that you're able to demonstrate how you can take that experience and make an impact at their organization and help move them forward.
That's great. So storytelling is a really important part of it, owning your narrative. Melinda's coming right in with a question right off the top. She says, it seems that many employers prefer candidates to have certifications in project management or IT, things like that. She wants to know, do you see this as a trend?
I do, and it really depends on the type of field that you're going into. And project management, what field are you going into? Are you going into healthcare? Are you going into IT? Are you going into the nonprofit world? It really depends. The best thing to do is scope out the field that you're interested in and see the people who work there, connect with them, and see what type of certifications that they recommend and what type of experience they need. Honestly, oftentimes project management is really managing projects and managing teams. And if you've done that in the past, it's all about storytelling again, demonstrating and showing an employer how you can take the skills that you've learned thus far in your career and manage their projects is also beneficial. And sometimes you can also get the employer to pay for any additional certification that you need. But use your experience to your advantage.
So for anyone who is worried about that stereotype of job hopping being a bad thing, Chelsea says, don't think of it that way. And Mac in the stream agrees, saying he believes that changing industries for the right reasons can definitely boost your career. You're often offered substantial additional compensation, that things have changed there. In the digital age, people who are already able to navigate are the ones who get to work remotely. That's a positive thing. He's agreeing with you there. Chelsea, a moment ago, you mentioned scoping out folks who are in the field that you want to work in and networking with them. I'm really curious about how that looks in the time of a pandemic. Industry events that maybe you would have attended in person before and mingled, and maybe you liked that, or maybe you were an introvert and you didn't like that. But the whole landscape is different. So do you have advice for people if they are looking to change? How can they start to build their networks and figure out how to make those connections to people who might be a bridge?
Yes, I think that's an excellent question. So I think this pandemic has really forced a lot of job seekers and professionals to really utilize technology. As we know, we can connect with people all over the world with different technology platforms. So I would strongly suggest looking at the industry that you're interested in and finding an organization that supports that, which is often a professional association. For every single job or career field that you can think of, there's a professional association that provides conferences, provides webinars, and ongoing training opportunities. So find those associations and connect with people who are members of those associations. An example is attending a webinar or a training that association is hosting and checking out their attendee list as well as the presenters. I mean, right there you have a commonality with those people, so it's kind of easier to break the ice, especially for an introvert. And I get it, I'm one myself. So coming up with a pitch online and speaking with people and kind of introducing yourself is a lot easier than doing it in person and walking right up and saying hi. So I think that takes a lot of the pressure off. But find the people who are attending those webinars, who are attending the conferences, and make sure to connect with them on LinkedIn. And you can send a simple message that just says, hey, I noticed that you recently attended this event. I'm interested in this field and would definitely love to learn more and see how I can also help you grow as a professional. Let's connect. Easy way to get the conversation started.
That's great. So even though physical in-person events are no longer, this actually might be a good thing for some people who wouldn't have been able to attend them or wouldn't have shined their brightest at those kind of in-person events anyway. Nicole in the stream is agreeing, saying changing industries can help you learn new skills and ensure you don't get stuck in a stagnant company or industry. I think that's a great point.
Exactly.
We have a few members who have pivoted into something that you do, Chelsea, resume writing. We've got Patrick and Karen both coming to the stream to say that they've started to pick up that work as well. With that in mind, let's talk about resumes for a moment. We've got some other questions in the stream saying, how do you set up your resume when you're not in the industry you're trying to get into? How do you make sure that you get a look when there could be thousands of others in the pile?
Definitely. So first of all, it really starts with you. It starts with branding and self-confidence and being able to promote yourself and kind of answer those questions that the employer is going to have. So first of all, you need to distinguish yourself and write down the skills that you do have, the experience that you've gained over the years, and look into that industry and see what they require and figure out how you can tie your previous experience to what they currently need. Oftentimes you've done the same thing and you just need to use their lingo to demonstrate that. I mean, there's a lot of transferable skills that organizations and industries need across the board. Are you really good at leadership? Are you able to manage teams and projects? Do you have critical thinking skills? Do you have communication skills? How are those interpersonal skills? So really take some of those skills and demonstrate how you can change them over into the new industry and just use their lingo.
All right, so pick up on keywords, use lingo. Don't worry that that seems like plagiarizing. It's actually a smart thing to pick up on the keywords and try to weave them in where appropriate. Still tell the truth clearly. But Charisse
Exactly.
wants to know, what about when you're in the interview chair? She wants to know, how do you respond to employers that give you pushback about changing careers?
Yes, definitely. I always say honesty is the best policy, and I know that's an old school phrase, but it's true. If you want to change careers, you're obviously doing it for a reason. So before you go to any interview, you need to have your story. Is changing into a different career always been a passion of yours? Does it highlight some of your natural traits and abilities, and you just want to make an impact on the population they serve? I mean, bring your human aspect to the front and share that story with them. And employers are people too, so oftentimes they can understand your reasoning behind making a career change.
That's good. So again, own your narrative, own your story, know what you're going to say in advance, anticipate that you might get that kind of a question, and just be ready for
Yeah.
it. You mentioned storytelling. We're talking about storytelling a lot. I want some stories from you. I want some inspiration here for folks watching who might think they might still feel intimidated despite all this great advice. Is this possible? How can you do this in a pandemic? Can you tell us about some of the folks you've worked with and how they've made these jumps, especially now that everything is digital?
Definitely. So I just want to say you can do it and you don't have to do it alone. I think the main thing is always finding support. So during a career change, it can be an exhausting process, it can be a scary process. So make sure you're leaning heavily on your network, which is your friends, your family. Lean on them for support and encouragement, and realize that you don't have to do it alone. You can have professional help. There are a lot of us resume writers and career coaches out here that can help you navigate this process so that you're not overly stressed and scared or confused or spinning your wheels. We are definitely here to help you. I just want to share that I've been working with a lot of different professionals who are making that career pivot. And just off the top of my head, a few examples. I am currently working with an account technician who wants to become a facilitator and trainer because he cares so much about spreading knowledge and positive messages. I'm also working with a teacher who wants to become a curriculum designer and developer just because she wants to create engaging, less boring curriculums, especially for students who are stuck at home now. You have to keep their attention. So she wants to transfer over into that role. I've also worked with another educator who wanted to become an editor because her passion is writing. So you can make the pivot. And like I said, you don't have to do it alone. It's possible. You can do it. I believe in you.
I think that's interesting that there's also a different way to think about what you might pivot into by asking that question of yourself. What's exciting for you? What's interesting? You might be faced with a blank stare if you just said, what industry do you want to go into? But if you kind of ask that different question of what do you like? What are you good at? Maybe the answer unfolds after that. Chelsea, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great advice. I hope it's been inspiring for members in the stream who are thinking through this question right now and helps them make the jump.
Thank you for having me, Susie. I appreciate it.
And I want to check back in with you. That was a great advice that we heard from Chelsea J. She is a career coach and resume writer, but we've been asking you throughout the show our poll question, which is, are you considering a career pivot yourself based on the pandemic? We've been polling professionals on the LinkedIn news page and here in the stream. And here are some of the answers. We're seeing 41% of you right now saying no, not contemplating a pivot right now. We're getting no's from Santiago, from Victor, from Sudhir. Thank you for voting. 37% of you are considering a pivot. for quality of life reasons. We're hearing that from Tonya, Patrick, Marty, Dolores, Kimberly, Chris, Heather, and Rob. Thank you for joining us. And some of you are considering it 21% for financial reasons. We're hearing that answer from Nancy and Bill, Amika, Kara, Margaret. Lots of you are also voting for B and C. So quality of life and financial reasons, it might be time for a pivot. As we heard from George Anders and Chelsea J, this is possible. We've got 4 years at least of LinkedIn data showing where folks have gone to after careers in retail, hospitality. It's a tough time for those industries right now. Maybe there is a way out for you. I hope that you've picked up some of those skills that you might need to do that on the show today. Tomorrow, we have Andrew Seaman here hosting Get Hired Live. His guest will be Elise Gelwicks, who's the founder of LVU Consulting. He and her will have a conversation about tips and strategies for finding work during this time. So that might be a show you need to tune into after everything you've learned on this show today. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Business Unusual, live from the LinkedIn News team. I'm Susie Jackson. Stay safe out there.